Hello, hello,
Hello.
and welcome to the definitely first stream for the first reading of the Jewish Book Club, reading The Lonely Man of Faith by Joseph Soloveitchik. We are discussing chapters 1, 2, and 3. Some of our other friends said that they would be late, but it's okay because Nathaniel is here, and that means everything is all right, and even our own community rabbi.
We put the streamlined link. Do people have link to join?
I put it in the book club chat, but I will also put it in the regular chat. So, Ben of Zion. How did you like the book so far?
I like it. It's interesting. It definitely has a different feeling to it than the Sachs book.
For sure. And here we go, sweaty Trey. He is all.
I told you I was gonna be sweaty.
He's just
I said I was
healthier
gonna
than
be
the rest
sweaty.
of us.
I know. I'm dying.
Yeah, it's certainly different than the Rabbi Sachs book. It's more like the first book, which is also, of course, a Soloveitchik book.
Mm-hmm.
It's much denser too. Like I feel like every page is so much more dense than the Rabbi Sachs book.
Well, it's going over. I feel like the thesis in this book is much more specific. So he's basically dwelling on one idea. He's going to dwell on one idea for, I imagine, for the entirety of the book. It's not that long, but the book is not that long. But still.
No, actually, don't. It's only like 100 pages, I think.
Yeah.
We already read 32 of them, so this probably won't go on too long.
But yeah, I like it, and it kind of connects. I mean, it does connect definitely to the Halachic man, but to the Sachs book as well. I feel like in this dual personality that it creates. So that's, I feel like that's definitely there. That's a connection that we can keep talking about.
I think it's also interesting. It seems also related in some sense to the meaning crisis, right?
How so?
Well, it seems like the meaning crisis is the crisis of what Rabbi Sachs, at least he seems to be alluding to for Adam number 2, right? Like the meaning of the world instead of like the physicality of the world, and man's feeling of aloneness. I think in some ways relates to the meaning crisis, where like it's about purpose, and the connection to the transcendent, which seems to be lacking if you don't have meaning, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think he talks about this. I mean, it comes up in the 3rd chapter. I feel like I had a problem understanding the 3rd chapter, but I think I'm getting it a little bit more. But I think he really highlights it there, what kind of loneliness he talks about, and how that's related to how what he calls the thinkers of the age of reason, which is basically the modern man, what they think loneliness is, or what they think loneliness is, or I think he calls it the adequate existential reality of the individual, as opposed to, and completely missing the spiritual aspect of the spiritual of Adam the second. So it's like, so I can hear that, I can see that, I can think about my personal, experience and people that I've talked to personally that are like living their life as the thinkers of the age of reason, like that conception of person. And they're like, okay, I'm doing my work, I'm doing all that, and I'm good, I'm getting this, I'm doing that. But then they suddenly realize, okay, I'm also Adam the second. I'm also this other conception. I have this other kind of loneliness that is not that it does not get fulfilled by the other aspects of collaboration or things that I'm doing or things that I have or experiences that I have in the day to day.
For sure. Well, I hope Sandy can join. I know she said she was only going to be 5 minutes late to the original time. Now it's 35 minutes later, and she still hasn't joined. So
yeah, I hope everybody's okay.
For sure. I guess one thing that I liked in the beginning is the role of the man of faith whose religious experience is fraught with inner conflicts and incongruities, who oscillates between ecstasy in God's companionship and despair when he feels abandoned by God, who is torn asunder by the heightened contrast between self-appreciation and abnegation, has been a difficult one since the time of Abraham and Moses. I thought that was interesting because
do you have a page number?
It's 2. It's like the kind of intro.
Okay.
The intro, I thought it was interesting because one kind of like technical way of like trying to describe the origin of religion, at least in our modern times, is that religion is some sort of like, balm for like nihilism, right? Where like people are nihilistic and therefore they created religion. And religion is like the panacea to the issue of our feeling of nihilism.
Or fear of death.
Yeah, exactly. And what I find so interesting about Rabbi Soloveitchik, obviously in this book and then in note 4 of the previous book, is his kind of repudiation of that. And how he says, it seems like really for the religious believer, in some sense, it's not like it's all easygoing, right? That it's, a solution to nihilism. In a sense, it seems like there's still difficulty and problems and questions of meaning and questions of purpose, even within the kind of framework of the religious man. So.
So both of these books were written after the Holocaust, right?
Yeah.
Right. I do have a question. Do you think the book works today?
What was the question?
Do you think this book works today? Because when I read it, I feel like this is very much for a specific time period, for a specific person. Am I wrong on that?
I'm not sure that's true.
I'm finding meaning in it already, so I don't know. Maybe you're not. So.
What made you think that, Trey?
I think because from what I understand, I got something a little different from Note 4 as well as Halakhic Man. Which was written first, Halakhic Man or The Lonely Man of Faith?
Halakhic
I can look it up, but I think the Halakhic Man.
Okay, because in Halakhic Man, I'm gonna say it wrong, and I know I will. It seems like he's calling religious believers for something else. And I think in Note 4 he mentions Christian Science. Right, where he just says, if you believe in Christ, all your miracles will be saved. Like you won't have to do anything. You won't have any big troubles. And I think what I got from Halakhic Man is very much like, it isn't only pragmatic. You should do more. You shouldn't just sit in your seats and do nothing. And I was like, okay, I can vibe with that. But then in Lonely Man of Faith, it seems like he's going more where he's saying, like, if you're not going to go full send, all into it, then why even try? And maybe I'm saying, being a bit too much with saying, why even you try? But it does feel like a little bit where he's like, if you're not doing all the laws, everything like that, why even try? I don't know if you guys get that. And it feels very much that it's written to the audience of the 50s and 70s who were religious but not taking it seriously.
I don't know where I would be curious to know where you're getting that feeling from specifically in the 3 chapters. I didn't notice.
Maybe I just need to read more. I'll take that.
No, I'm honestly asking. Like, maybe I missed something.
I think that we should maybe answer the first question that Jacob posed. We should explain Adam 1 and Adam 2.
Go for it.
So, okay. Well, Adam 1 is, so in Genesis, there's Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 1 is kind of like a broad explanation of the origins of man, while chapter 2 in Genesis is like the Garden of Eden one. So Genesis chapter 1 is kind of the 7 days of creation, and then Genesis chapter 2 deals with the creation of the garden. And the creation of man in each of these accounts is different. Adam number 1 is created together with Eve, and they're given a variety of different purposes, like to be fruitful and multiply. Wow. There's a little section, let's see, that like 1, 2, 3 section.
Yeah.
Soloveitchik breaks them down. Okay, yeah. So he says, in the story of the creation of Adam the first, it is told that the latter was created in the image of God, while nothing is said about how his body was formed. In the account of the creation of Adam the second, it is said that he was fashioned from the dust of the ground, and God breathed into his nostrils with the breath of life. Number 2, Adam the first received a mandate from the Almighty to fill the earth and subdue it. Adam the second was charged with the duty to cultivate the garden and keep it.
Mm-hmm.
In the story of Adam the first, both male and female were created concurrently, while Adam the second emerged alone, with Eve appearing subsequently as his helpmate and complement. Finally, and this is a discrepancy of which biblical criticism has made so much, while the first account only the name Elohim or Elohim appears, while in the second, Elohim is used in conjunction with the Tetragrammaton.
Right.
So that's his kind of distinctions between the 2 accounts.
Yeah. And the distinction is to fill this out. I think like the distinction with Adam the first is that he's described that he's created in the image of God, and the reading of that, the Jewish reading of that, and I think he references Rambam too, is that refers specifically to the intellectual aspect. So I think really the kind of like the thing that is emphasized in the Adam the first is kind of like it's all, for me, it kind of maps onto like this left brain, right brain very much. So it's like very much like the precise manipulation of the environment and kind of task oriented. And that's also exemplified in the fact that God gives them the specific task to rule over nature, to conquer it, Limshol, which is, and then the second, and then the Adam the second, I think an important verse in that is that God says, like, not the man is not good by himself, something like that, right? So that's kind of like, and that is only said about Adam the second. So there is something about the loneliness there.
And the contrast between alone and loneliness, and the sense that some of the tension comes in of, in some ways, in terms of how the 2 accounts are seen and talked about by like theologians or whoever, like biblicals, those who are studying the texts, to sort it out. But the point that Rabbi Soloveitchik was making is that the dichotomy isn't in the telling of the story, but within. It's done to show the tension within man himself. That we experience between these two places, which it makes it very relevant for today.
I do have a question. So he does. I can't tell. Does he believe he believes it's all to be metaphor, right? Like he doesn't actually think that there was an Adam 1 created and then an Adam 2, right?
Not that I'm aware. I don't know. I never saw that in here.
I don't think he.
I think he's doing that because of the two different chapters.
I don't think it's necessary. I think he mentioned somewhere like.
Or aspects, the tension between the majesty. What was it? Majesty of the one and was it dignity of the other?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Majesty and dignity.
Yeah. And that's why he's describing, kind of like what Ben was saying about the two, the different, the creative versus the logical brain as well, which he did go into in Halakhic Man, but in a completely different sense.
Yeah.
So he would agree that Genesis is only talking about one Adam, like if you pressed him on that, right?
Which one?
Well, are you meaning?
I guess, is this fan fiction, or when he reads it, is he like, oh, Genesis 1, Adam 1, oh, Genesis 2, Adam 2? Like, I'm a little confused on maybe it's how literal he's taking these things.
It's probably not cool to speak for a rabbi, especially seeing as he's already dead and cannot answer the question himself for you. But my understanding from how I read him was that he's not saying that two different Adams were created. He's talking about Adam and Eve as creation from two different points of view, and therefore two different chapters of showing that the different aspects of man as created.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think he's using the stories as an interpretive tool. So the question whether he believes whatever belief he put, I don't know. It's not something he addresses. He's just using it as an interpretive tool.
Okay. Because I was a little confused at the start because he mentions the point about the documentary hypothesis. Like, I can't accept that, but then I'm going to write a treatise why I sort of think it's true, but which was a little weird for me.
No.
I mean, at the very least, if you're saying that there's two different Adams, it's very hard not to say that there's two different writers that are combining the stories. I mean, that's what the P source is trying to say.
I don't think so.
Why?
Let's see. He does have something. He mentions. Let's see. We all know that the Bible offers two accounts of the creation of man. We are also aware of the theory suggested by biblical critics, attributing these two accounts to two different traditions and sources. Of course, since we do unreservedly accept the unity and integrity of scriptures and their divine character, we reject this hypothesis, which is based, like much of biblical criticism, on literary categories invented by modern man, ignoring completely the eidetic, noetic content of the biblical story. It is, of course, true that the two accounts of creation of man differ considerably. This incongruity was not discovered by the biblical critics. Our sages of old were aware of it. However, the answer lies not in an alleged dual tradition, but in dual man. Not in imaginary contradiction between two verses, but in a real contradiction in the nature of man.
You guys are going to kill me with your heresies here.
We're trying not to.
So, as I said, Adam, so we're talking about Adam Kadmon and Adam Rishon. Adam Kadmon, or Adam 1, was created before physical creation.
I've read this.
Oh no.
Adam Rishon is the first man that was physically created.
Ah,
Yeah, I mean, you can take the Kabbalistic route like Jacob does.
Elijah, like, I have no idea why you, of all people, decided on this book, but when you said, yeah, you said something about his rejection of the Kabbalah, Chalila v'chas, the Rav never rejected the Kabbalah of the Arizal in any way, like, in any way. So, like, he is explaining what the Arizal taught and what it has been taught by Judaism since before Christianity existed, which is that not publicly since before Christianity existed, publicly for the past 500 years, but privately since before Christianity existed, which is that there were spiritual creations which preceded before the creation of the physical world. That's why I keep on saying in Genesis 1:2, there is no physical water like people think. Did that clarify things at all?
I mean, it just made me more nervous and frustrated, but I guess that works.
Nervous and frustrated about what? The documentary hypothesis?
I mean, it doesn't go into it, like, so that I think what I was trying to say when I was responding is that he doesn't really go into it, because I think it doesn't necessarily, at the level that he's talking about, at least initially, doesn't matter to the insights or the ideas that he's trying to drive at. So,
but I actually think it does matter. So he's making a point. It seems from the part Elijah read. It's been a very long time since I read Lonely Man of Faith. But he's making a point that people are too literally reading Genesis 1 and 2, and they think, so this idea that God, that only the name Elohim, right, Midat Hadin, was used to create the world, and God saw that the world could not stand in such a manner, and therefore he created the Tetragrammaton to allow the world to exist. This goes back to Chazal. So this is thousands of years old, and he's directly confronting modernism as we understand it, I believe.
You know what's really weird? I have such a hard time reading this because I have 30 years of other contexting, hammered into me. And I just stepped out of an estuary meeting where we're talking about language and structure.
I have to go to
story and structure. And when I think about, when I see the part where it talks about Tetragrammaton, I was thinking about this book in the middle of that meeting, because in some respects, because I was thinking about, you see the image of the Tetragrammaton, and I couldn't explain it for the life of me still, even though I've heard it explained a bunch of times. But the structure and the intersection points and all the ways in which it builds a framework around. Yeah. These 3 chapters were short and very hard for me to read. I kept going back over, going, I see the words. I see the words. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I know for a fact, Ben, when you read this and you read it from a Jewish perspective, there's got to be more there than what I see.
I don't know. I mean, you have an experience just like I have, even more experiences than I have. So you might you might see more things than I see. I just see it from a very specific angle. Um,
I'm assuming Jacob's trying to do homework while we're irritating him.
Jacob has to go to class. That's what he said.
Yeah. Oh dear, poor Jacob. So, in light of what Jacob was saying, when we get on page 9 and Rabbi Soloveitchik is talking about pointing out 4 major discrepancies, like I look and I think, I've only ever thought of these 2 chapters in the, like concrete sense that I was taught, but yeah, there's 1,000 ironies between my last conversation and this one. Okay. So if Jacob's pointing out that Adam, the first is Adam Kadmon, that's it, and that this is not yet creation on earth. And yet it says on your 4 point thing that you just read, Elijah, Adam the first received the mandate from the Almighty to fill the earth and subdue it. Adam the second was charged with the duty to cultivate the garden and keep it. There must be a very definite significance to somebody who is created, not yet in the tangible sphere, being told to fill and subdue the earth that's going to be created, as opposed to somebody that's told to cultivate it. Does that come up in? I have not studied Kabbalah.
this sounds like a very good
I
question.
have taken my little kid's pail and shovel and just kind of skimmed the surface.
Yeah, that's actually, I think it's a very good question. I have no idea what the answer is. When I was reading it, I was getting the sense that, at least on a very basic level, he's trying to tell us, or again, he's using this to show us that there are two at the least two personalities, two perspectives that we all hold. It's the same. Eventually, it's the same responsibility. It's the same goal, but we work in two interpretive states, and he's exemplifying them, or he's showing them in these two, in Adam the first and Adam the second. So yeah, the deeper Kabbalistic stuff is definitely something that's, I think, goes over my head at the moment.
I am listening to the world from a very weird spot this week. Like I'm standing in the middle of 2 places in my life, and that's probably where that question comes from. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was kind of like struggling. I'm trying to see if I can. I was kind of struggling at first when he was. Well, maybe I'm still struggling with how he was conceptualizing the two, the two Adams. Sorry, because he was both think I have it in my notes somewhere, but he was both like calling Adam the first as somebody is like is very much of this world, but then in the other sense, he was saying how Adam the first is like the mathematician who lives in abstractions. And it's almost like I was also thinking about like and I think maybe he put it, but I was thinking about how like the artist and the mathematician, which I normally wouldn't put in the same box, they're in some ways, and I think he talks about it because he talks about aesthetics, about Adam the first being aesthetic, or cares about it, beauty or aesthetics, and I can see that because as an artist, you also build a world that is separate from this world, right? It's in your head or it's somewhere in between, and you're kind of running experiments in stories that you write because you've had a certain experience, or there's a character in your life that you're really intrigued by, and you're like, you know what if I put that character in a restaurant and then something happens to it, and then I can just think about that. Like, I'm just talking from like how I would write stories in the past. So I would run these experiments in kind of like that kind of prosaic manner, and that seems similar to what the mathematician does in a way. But how can that be true? And also, he calls this person somebody that is of this world. So he both lives in this world, but also lives in abstraction. So I don't know if somebody else also had that kind of like.
Well, I think it's the purpose of the abstraction, because let's see. In my book, it's page 13, but if you have the PDF, it's different. Adam the First is interested in a single aspect of reality and only asks one question only: how does the cosmos function? He's not fascinated by the question, why does the cosmos function at all? Nor is he interested in the question, what is its essence? He's only curious to know how it works. In fact, even this how question with which Adam the First is preoccupied is limited in scope. He is concerned not with the question per se, but with its practical applications. Right? He raises not a metaphysical, but a practical, technical how question. To be precise, his question is related not to the genuine functioning of the cosmos itself, but to the possibility of reproducing the dynamics of the cosmos by employing quantified mathematized media which man evolves through postulation and creative thinking. The cognitive moment of attraction which Adam the First experiences towards the world is not of an exploratory cognitive nature. It is rather nurtured by the selfish desire on the part of Adam to better his own position in relation to his environment. So I think that the question is like, these abstractions are meant to relate only to the physical or to the material.
Right.
Oh, there goes Trey.
Oh, we lost Trey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, because for example, like if you take physics, back in 10, 20 years ago, there was a big debate between the particle physicists and the string theorists.
Mm-hmm.
And all the string theorists' mathematical equations worked. So every time the particle physicists discovered something new, the string theorists could rearrange their mathematical equations and they get the same outcomes. So, okay, we hypothesize that the world is like a string or like a particle. And one of the reasons why the particle physicists won out, other than them, is that they had more predictive power, right?
Yeah.
And so it wasn't like, the question is not necessarily like, we've determined that it's actually more like strings or actually more like particles. It's more like, well, thinking that it's like particles is more practical.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one we're going to go with.
It's interesting. It kind of reminds me. I was listening to a conversation. This is gonna be very topical, but it just reminds me of it. I was listening to a conversation that like, because it's kind of this roundtable with Elon Musk, Bibi Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli PM, and one of the co-founder of ChatGPT, and another Tegmark, Tegmark, like an AI philosopher, or whatever his title is. But anyway, they were talking about AI impact, positive and negative, and most of their conversation, if I think about it, is really they're talking from within their Adam the first. But here is what this can do. Here is what we predict will happen. Here are the things that, like, both good and bad, and here's the best. And then somebody was saying, like, I think maybe it was Elon that was asking, like, here's the best possible outcome. And somebody on the panel asked him, like, also, the question is, like, best, like, how do you define best? Like, best for who? Or why is that the best? So, and I think that kind of like shifted, and then suddenly they all shifted to Adam the second, right? To these questions, right? So, like in the book, Soloveitchik says about Adam the second. This is page 20. He wants to know, why is it, what is it, and who is it? So he wonders, why did the world in its totality come into existence? Why is man confronted by this stupendous and indifferent order of things and events? He asks what the purpose of this all. Who is he who trails me steadily, uninvited and unwanted, like an everlasting shadow, and vanishes into the recess of a transcendence the very instance I turn around to confront this numinous, awesome, and mysterious he. Anyway, so it kind of felt like they suddenly had to shift to this Adam the second perspective of thinking, wait, okay, right, what is improvement? Which I hear PVK kind of harps on this. What do you mean by improved? And I think that's a good thing to do. And then I'll connect one thing and then I'll end the rant. But I've been having this question that, like, these four people who were on that panel, a politician, like a modern philosopher, and two tech guys.
Mm-hmm.
I never see in these discussions any religious leaders, which is really interesting to me, because they're definitely, at least for a little bit in public, but definitely when they're deeply coding the thing, they have to confront this Adam the second questions. They have to confront these boundaries, or the direction of where they want the AI to optimize for. And I don't. It's very interesting to me that there's no discussions. Maybe they are not publicly, but there's no discussions that bring forward thinkers that are also religiously oriented. So yeah, that was what I was thinking.
That's interesting.
So I have a question. Do you really think that the programmer who's coding the bot is having Adam the second type of questions? Because usually when you have some sort of product, you have some sort of business purpose for it, right? And for a GPT bot, general intelligence or something like that is being asked for the actual creation of the AI. But it seems like the purpose of the AI, once it's created, that's a secondary question that's not actually relevant to the programmer doing the work.
I think I think it's, I don't know if I understood it entirely, but I think it's not secondary. It's even preliminary. It's like the programmer or the business outcome, the business goal is the thing that is defined by the Adam the second axioms that are set up by so the constraints that are put on what what the AI can do, you have to program it in a certain way that it moves in certain directions, right? It has values. It doesn't plagiarize. It doesn't do, it talks in a certain way. And I think those are practical. Those are Adam the second questions that become practical, because when you think about the I think maybe I'm confusing this, but I think those are kind of like the values about what is important, what is important about what we're doing here, and in the purpose of existence and how you want to live that existence. Yeah, I don't know if I'm articulating it super well, but
Can you give me like an example of how the Adam the second questions fit in there? Like what would that look like in the discussion context you were describing?
So he asked, what is the purpose of all of this? What is the message that is embedded in organic and inorganic matter? What does the great challenge reaching me from beyond the fringes of the universe, as well from the depth of my tormented soul, mean? So this is the question that Adam II asks, right? What is the message that is embedded? So that's definitely, I feel like the exploration of these messages are what helps us understand how to live our life as best we can according to what God wants from us, according to what the message is, and understand the trade-offs, because there's always trade-offs between this kind of value and that value. But if we explore these questions, then we are able to understand a little bit better about those things. And I think the people that go through those questions, that think about those questions deeply, are in a better optimal grip stance to actually then also apply their insights and propagate them into the AI that they're building, that is going to, download their biases into the world or upload their biases.
Yeah, again, I'm going to maybe just push back on that a little bit, because let me just take something practical. So we have Tesla and we have Comma AI. These are two different car companies that are trying to do full self-driving.
Yeah.
It seems to me that all of the concerns of full self-driving is, okay, we want the car to drive for us, right? That's a purely practical problem. Self-driving cars. And so the question is, what is the best way to achieve that result, right? Or these other things, right? Or like, what is the, how do we design this kind of thing? Is it going to be open-ended, or are we going to like label everything? And it doesn't seem like there's any real connection to the questions of like, is it good for us to drive, right? Or like, should we design our cities with cars in mind? Or these kind of But even then, those are still kind of like physical questions that are related to materiality. But I feel like Adam the second is kind of questions is like, you know, like why do we humans have cities or something like that, right?
Why do
But
you
doesn't
build a
that doesn't
self-driving car?
doesn't that question help you? Sorry, Sandy, go ahead.
Why do you build a self-driving car? That would be an Adam the second question. Is that what you were getting at? Or just why do we have cities?
Well, I'm saying it's like it feels like it needs to be more abstract. Like you can say, I want the self-driving cars so that I don't have to focus on driving, right? That's like a way to dignify yourself, to use Soloveitchik's language, right? You dignify yourself by not being forced to do this kind of menial task, which is driving. But that doesn't then seem to be an Adam the second kind of question.
I'm not sure which is which, but when you bring up that example and I listen to the options, you can ask all of those concrete questions as to how to do it best. How am I going to extend my reach into the world and build? But then you've also got how do I make a garden? So is this self-driving car because I have a disabled son who cannot actually use this or that, like his hands or feet to drive a car himself, but otherwise is perfectly capable of running a business and would love to be able to get there safely. So is it for safety or is it for independence?
I still think that's in some ways an Adam the first kind of question.
Is it still an Adam the first question?
I think so.
It also goes, but if it goes to, then what is the difference between, what did he say? The thing was to fill the earth and subdue it is an Adam the first question, a goal, right? But the second one is, so the first is a mandate, and the second one is he's charged with a duty to cultivate the garden and keep it. Well, that's not even the whole earth. That's something within the earth. And so those function on different levels, do they not? And if you're saying the one is mostly about how and the other is about why, what else is there?
I think the why is related to why are we here?
But I mean, I think those are questions that are related to how you're going to function in the world. Mm-hmm. So when you ask about why do we need to have self-driving cars, when you ask what is a human, and then you think about it and you say, okay, a human is like a person or it's a family, and then you ask what is a family, or those questions are going to be embedded in how a self-driving car is going to be. So the self-driving car is going to, if it's for the human, if it's for the family, it's going to have a certain design, right? The seats in the back are going to have leather or stain, something that doesn't stain because there's kids in the back. It's going to have, all those kind of, so those things matter to you. So even if you think about a product and that your goal from a technological perspective is to, get a good driverless car, there's still an aspect of the company trying to make that car for a specific or a specific person. And that's where you need to define who is that person. And that is where the more qualitative aspect, which he identifies with Adam II, comes in. So
I would say that I agree with the first part. Like, what is a human? That seems to certainly be an Adam, the second kind of question. And
yeah,
to some extent, what is a family? I also agree.
okay,
Seems to be an Adam, the second kind of question. However, I think then you slide to Adam the first.
right,
Right?
yeah.
Immediately.
But that's
And
the
so, but the question is like, how should I say this? I don't think it in some ways matters. Like in the sense of if I imagine myself building this,
Mhm.
you know, I don't have to think about what a family means in the abstract. Instead, I can just say like, okay, what is the empirical reality of quote unquote family, right? I just say, okay, these are human constructs. A family is defined as, you know, the group of people who call themselves a family, whatever. Some sort of social organization. And then I say, okay, a family has children, children spill drinks, we're gonna have leather in the back. But I don't need to think about like what is like why do families exist, right? Or anything like that.
So you're saying, oh, somebody already thought about that, so that's why you don't need to think about it.
Yeah, and I just don't I think it like in some ways these play into it, but I don't think that they play into it in the way that you're thinking about it, right? Like I don't need to care like why
Well, then your self-driving car could simply be your basic cube van that drives itself with no seats, no anything, and you just dump everybody in on the floor.
I don't think that that's the case because
No.
if you're trying to sell something, you just say like, well, who is the audience for it? But I don't think that who is the audience for it is again an out in the second kind of question.
So I have a sense that Jonathan is going to explain this.
Yay!
Perfectly.
well.
Jonathan's going to come in and save us.
He's gonna, but I think that, and now I forgot what I wanted to say, so I'll just drop it.
Well, first of all, this book is amazing, and I'm really digging it, and was probably more excited to read the next chapters and even come to the book club. No offense, but it was just like we should just keep plowing through. Yeah, I wanted to get on earlier, and I heard the discussion move into like AI. I think I'm in Elijah's camp. I think AI is firmly in the Adam 1 category. It's a technology. It's creation. It's dominion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, the thing is, we haven't gotten to Adam 2 yet, so I don't know about the overlap or like the relationship between Adam 2 and Adam 1. So, you know, I don't want to like dichotomize this thing so starkly to say that there's not a reflective, you know, asking why kind of element to these sort of questions around like AI or self-driving cars. But to me, you know, having been in the driver's seat, no pun intended, of you know, computer programming and all that kind of stuff, it's you're wielding a tool, and of course it's going to be influenced by your needs and wants and desires, but it's not a reflective meditative telos, maybe.
Well, so you know what? Maybe I'm confusing. I'm not sure that I'm seating that, but I think maybe I'm also confusing the fact that in this specific roundtable that they talked about, they also spoke about from the policy perspective. So the BB, which I imagine everybody knows what I'm saying when I'm saying BB, he was talking about, okay, how are we going to harness this power in a way that betters our society, right? And other people were asking the same question, like from even a regulatory perspective, like if this is going to be regulated, AI, then how is it going to be regulated in the way that optimizes to better society and to reduce the risk? Now, for those questions, I think that's even more explicitly Adam the second question.
Yeah, and I think I don't have a citation, but I believe that there was a nod to that, the fact that like Adam 1 is a a almost unbridled, not will to power, but just, like it's more pure creative force.
Mhm.
And it's tempered by Adam too. But I haven't read beyond chapter 3 yet, so I'm really eager to see how those things are reconciled or synthesized. But yeah, I mean, I think that's right. You were saying, Ben, about there's no religious leaders in the AI ethics conversations or whatever, and I think that's partly due to the fact that it's just so new and it's arrived on the scene from a public consciousness standpoint so recently, but also because frankly I think it's still kind of a naked technology, and it's not I guess I'm not so impressed by AI, so I think maybe that's part of the reason why, or ChatGPT or large language models, right? So it's it hasn't actually risen to the level of really requiring this level of engagement from
Right.
the religious powers that be. So that's maybe my cynical take on it.
Well, I would actually. First of all, I like your take, Jonathan. Thank you for that. I'm still going to push
You're
back
welcome.
on Ben because I still disagree with Ben.
I
Because
thought we all agreed. That's it.
No. I think the policy question again is it's a question of how are we going to use a plow? That is, I still think it's completely within the realm of Adam 1, because to me, and now the second question is if we have AI that can do everything that humans do, especially things that humans seemingly uniquely are able to do, then what is a human? To me, that seems like a very much an Adam the second kind of question. But
Okay, so that's
policy
you're
is
taking
still
you're taking a question exactly from that roundtable. So they were
Okay.
talking about. So that is a policy thing because they need to. It matters for the policymakers because they need to figure out which unions to help. All that kind of. I mean, it does get pragmatic in terms of practical. So sorry.
I don't know if I agree. I see what you're saying, but to me, I think the practical question is, in regards to that, is okay, how do we deal with the fact that this new technology can do something that humans do slowly, right? To me, it's no different than saying okay, we have a mechanical drill, or we have someone who wields a pickaxe, and they're both digging a tunnel in a mountain, right? To me, that it seems like AI policy is still on that level.
Wait,
Yes.
so, sorry for cutting you off. I just want to understand this. Are we saying Adam the First is the technological side and is trying to just push forward without thinking of the repercussions? I just want to get that down.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that Adam the First is related to the material world and materiality, and Adam the Second is related to the transcendent.
Hey, spoiler alert! Did you read ahead?
No.
Okay.
That would be my conception as well.
And I think Ben and I are just ironing out the differences of what we think the transcendent and the practical kind of interact with.
I think that I think when you were saying, Ben, I understand what you were saying, that I was mentioning this is Adam the Second, this is Adam the Second, and then you slipped into Adam the First. I actually totally agree with you, but that's exactly my point. My point is that there is an integration that's unavoidable there. So, and that was what I was pointing out, that when maybe it's on the policy level, but you have to do those things together, or at some point those things need to be more intentional, even if it's just not, as opposed to just being something that's axiomatic inside the developer's mind.
I think that we can go back and forth on this for a while longer, and I'm willing to open up the discussion to so that it's not just Ben and I arguing.
I don't think you're going to be able to reconcile it, at least with a group consensus at this point, because we've just been introduced to Adam 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good, like, this will be probably a perennial question of, like, I mean, depending on how this unfolds. One piece I wanted to say was that I was struck how much the focus of dignity of man in Adam 1 came from, sort of his impressiveness and his like gravitas, and which is almost had like a Nietzschean Übermensch kind of quality to it, and was, frankly, like not a very Christian worldview or position, like, I guess, sort of in the Nietzschean vein of the criticism against Christianity. So it was kind of like, it's kind of baller to like see Adam 1, as this like pretty impressive dude strutting his stuff and like, just crushing creation. So
In a positive way.
In a positive way, yeah. Like, there was something very, very bold about it, but not at all gross or like, like the bad guys in Captain Planet. Like, it's just like gregarious is maybe the, or magnanimous or something is the word I was thinking about. But anyway, that really stood out to me and like kind of drew me into like, all right, the Soloveitchik guy's all right.
Trey wants to say something, that's for sure.
Trey, you're on mute.
I know. I don't want to rain on your parade because I just... Okay, so I'm trying to at least... Okay. In the third chapter, as I'm reading, oh yeah. Whenever Adam the First wants to work to produce and succeed in the undertakings, he must unite with others. The whole theory of the social contract brought to perfection by the philosophers of the Age of Reason reflects the thinking of Adam the First, identifying man with his intellectual nature and creative technological will, and finding in human existence coherent legitimacy and reasonableness exclusively. Like, I sort of understand that, but if you look at the very beginning, when we talk about Adam 1, he mentions that Adam 1 is only focused on beauty. Where is it?
Yeah, no, he says that, but it's like, I think it's like the Steve Jobs quote of like, design is how it works. So the aesthetic is not so, it's not so abstract. It's practical and utilitarian and like understanding things for manipulation and
Can somebody? I just want to find the exact quote where he says that, because
He says something about form and content, or worrying more about form. I think
on the side page, first chapter. No, this is chapter 2. Anybody? It's on the left side of the page of one of the chapter ones.
I'm looking at a PDF, my man.
Can you just look for like beauty or something like that?
For beauty or
Is it page 18?
chapter 1?
Yes. 18. Second paragraph. He fashions the ideas with his mind and beauty with his heart.
Maybe. That's chapter.
You guys keep talking. I'll find this because I.
Yeah, his conscience is energized not by the idea of the good, but by that of the beautiful.
Yes.
What page is that on, Ben?
18.
Oh, 18.
18, bottom of the page.
His conscience is energized not by the idea of good, but that of the beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
about-
his mind is questing not for the true, but for the pleasant and functional, which are rooted in the aesthetical, not the noetic ethical sphere.
I mean, I guess you're sort of right, Jonathan. I'll give you that, but it seems like a little bit of contradictory terms. At least, it
What is it contradicting again? What page?
like, well, no, at the very least, like, okay. So he said, if you're focused on the beautiful, right, like that is your focus.
Yeah.
I just feel that when I think of somebody who's focused on the beautiful, I think of an artist, and that is very much right brain sort of thinking, not left brain. And I feel that when I'm reading this book, he is trying to create Adam 1 and Adam 2, but it seems that they're just flowing in and out of each other. And then he tries to make distinctions when he wants to.
Well, that was what I was saying that I was struggling with, but then I kind of like, I felt like, because I was saying the mathematician, because he was talking about the abstraction, like the reason why he's doing it is like, I mean, that was what Elijah was explaining, right? When I was comparing the artist to the mathematician, is that they're doing this in order to be able to predict or to do something in the world of this world. So it doesn't map onto the left right brain maybe as nicely, but he doesn't mention that. That's just something that we're bringing to this.
So two things I would say to that, like aesthetics, I think, has different qualities, and one of them is like the simplicity of like an elegant solution, right? Like think about like an algorithm or something in like even in computer science or something where it's like, you know, there you see beauty in a simplicity or in some kind of a in a design versus like seeing beauty from the standpoint of like, oh, what a great color palette or something that's like a lot less functional, right? There's functional beauty and there is I don't know, a non-functional beauty, let's call it. And I think that I mean, I assume he's talking about the former. But it also sounds like, I mean, just going back to like his original intent was to, you know, take the two creation accounts from the Torah, you know, from Genesis and say like, you know, there's two creation accounts and any idiot can see that. And we figured that out long before biblical criticism came on the scene. And let's unpack this and understand why there are two creation accounts, you know, given by God to Moses at Sinai, you know, and think about, you know, what are the implications of that? And so I'm less perturbed by it than you are, Trey.
Well, I guess, like, okay, what Father Stephen DeYoung says about Genesis, he says, chapter 1 is sort of a general summarization, and chapter 2 is a continuous story. And he says the reason that is because if you look at other ancient texts, usually at the beginning you get the summary, and then you get the overall story. Now, I am a little confused on this.
I love it.
I'm a little confused on this because it, like, there's a difference between like sticking and saying like, okay, this is the reason why God does this, and going more into the actual environment when it was written. And I think that's something we connect with. But I don't see that. He's directly trying to say Adam 1 and Adam 2 happened today. And I think that's my difficulty, because if you're going to make a separation, you have to make it more clear. And I think that's why he's swapping things around.
At some point, I have a weird question from this week.
Why not now?
So, you know, in all those, hey, you might be interested in this piece of fact that you don't understand kind of things Google feeds you. Let me see how it goes. I sent myself this link to look at because, oops. No, I don't want to do that. Send myself this link. It was, and I don't know how to tell, because I didn't do science and stuff. I'm not really high. But so I was going to ask just in general. So this one is, would you say that sciencealert.com is a site that you would read for information? Because they put out this thing talking about strange mathematical pattern that was found in the cells of the body. And it was kind of interesting, actually, to look at. Because if it's true, it's making me think of our discussion. Let me see. I can stick it into the... I'll stick it in the private chat for now. I don't know if I know how to stick it in that other one. Where are we? There we are. Okay, so they're talking about this thing where there's these two things going on in the body with the way the cells are. So, and you guys are talking about the difficulty of sort of saying the merging of atom 1 and atom 2, that, you're struggling with dichotomy. But this was interesting. And in this thing, they're talking about oxygen carrying corpuscles in our blood. Where is it? So there's this. All right. Well, there's this map partway down. They're looking at the difference between cell mass and biomass. Sorry, cell counts and biomass. And what fascinates me and why it's making me think of this is, if the two atoms come at things from like very different directions, but if they're telling the same story somehow, is that what this thing is saying that our body does in terms of the way the cells work? Because they're saying there's more of the cells that have less mass, and this stuff keeps balancing out. The patterns are get away from the ad. Okay. Based on exhaustive analysis of over 1,500 published sources, most adult males contain a total of 36 trillion cells, while adult females tend to have 28 trillion cells. 10-year-old child will have approximately 17 trillion. Okay, so as well as a total cell count, the study revealed something really interesting. If you group cells into categories based on their size, each size category contributes roughly the same amount to the mass of the body. When I picture the two atoms, or hang on a second, the patterns are suggestive of a whole organism trade-off between cell size and count, and imply the existence of cell size homeostasis across cell types. Anyway, and that's what they're looking at in this paper. If that is balancing of things within the body, so that if it's smaller size, there's more of them because they're still creating the same pattern. And we're talking about the logic and the reasons behind the things that each of the atoms, how they approach things and how they contribute to things in the world. So is the fact, like when I first mentioned the thing about Adam the first gets to subdue the whole earth, but Adam second is told to cultivate the garden. Well, the one is like large sphere and the other one is kind of focused on this smaller sphere.
I mean, I think he's talking about them in terms of integration, right?
Right. Well, and it reminds me of other things I've been watching for years, where like I come on here and you guys are talking about Fibonacci patterns, how everything is built around mathematical patterns. Every single, thing, every letter in the Bible matters. Every single this and that. And I'm still sitting here going, I'm listening to you guys talk about things that you actually understand. And I only wonder about, so if Adam II brings in the Tetragrammaton as part of what is the instruction there, what is the significance there, or whatever, what am I not yet knowing about why? Because this is all about the fact he's talking about being lonely, about what loneliness looks like to each of these two people, about what loneliness looks like to us today, and that sense of connect disconnect. So it's not being alone that's the problem, you know, like, I mean, if you're alone, that's just, you're alone. But he's talking about everything that, I mean, you said bringing together, and I'm like, so every time that the Tetragrammaton comes up, I wish I understood the layers and the integration of the lines and what is being said, because every single one of those connections is part of a story that's a story within a story. And is that what he's trying to explain to us here? That, you know, we're both, and we struggle with loneliness because if Adam Kadmon is created before creation, is that like when, you know, like Jacob or Joseph would talk about things that we all know the whole of the law before we're born, and when we're born we forget it, and then you start to create with God all over again, and you know, work to remembering it or relearning it? Like, is the loneliness that he's talking about, is it so much about AI and electric?
Not to cut you off, Sandy, but I think the problem is we haven't gotten to that part yet, right? We've only discussed Adam the First, and these are all Adam the Second kind of questions, which we haven't read those chapters.
Really? Oh, because I thought he was talking about him here, and like, so he's not talking about him yet.
I don't think in the depth that you kind of are soul searching for. I don't think that he's talked about them in depth enough yet for us to really
why
say.
I'm having trouble reading it, because I'm like, where is the? Okay, keep talking.
No, save those thoughts, Sandy. We'll need them next time.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, a small thing. I don't know what Jacob was describing in terms of like the use of different terms for God in both stories. That's one thing. But what came up for me is that it's Elohim, it's God in the first story, and it's Lord in the second, or the Tetragrammaton in the second story, and Elohim is more of the midat adin, so like the more the judgment rule of judgment. So again, more exact, more kind of like reward and punishment, you can say. And then the God in the second story is the more relational one, more merciful. I think I'm getting my terms right, but that's what I was thinking about when that came up.
And now I listen. Okay, dumb question. Is he just referencing Adam II as he goes through these three chapters, just so we know what we're contrasting to at this point, if we're focusing on Adam the First?
I think he's beginning to set up the dichotomy.
Okay, because I thought in Halakhic Man, like, he'd bring them up, but I didn't have that sense of kind of balancing them right away at first, kind of the way I thought we were with this one. So I really knew that we were focusing on, homo religiosus, or I knew that we were focusing on cognitive man. Like, I knew where the attention was. So, okay.
one small thing that I was also thinking about, and this might also be for Yosef if he's listening, but it was interesting to me that Soloveitchik was talking about Adam the first task with conquering nature and ruling over it, and then that's the same word that's used when we talk about Cain and ruling over sin. And I was just trying to connect those two. So I haven't yet, but I'm thinking about it. I'm just curious if there's anything else. If anybody else thought about it, or if there's anything out there.
No, but I like it. Trey, let's go back to your original beef with you just don't like the two accounts of creation thing.
Well, okay. I just don't know. Like, okay, he's not. Okay. There's many ways to approach Genesis, and it's probably one of the biggest Bible books that has been written about. And not gonna lie, I'm a little tired about it. But okay. Well, this is good. And I just feel like maybe I'm wrong, but I asked the question, why him? And as well as, is this fan fiction or does he actually care about the two different accounts? And I think that's my discrepancy. Because, like, if you're asking, like, someone to really break down and say, like, why do we have these two accounts? You're going to do a different task. I think you're going to look at the historical. You're going to look at the Hebrew, right? But he's not doing that. It seems like more or less he says, these are two metaphors, and I'm going to sort of expand them into my own sort of thing. And I guess I don't see him really trying to reconcile Adam 1 and Adam 2. It seems like he just wants to create his own thing.
Because he says in the beginning there is no reconciliation between the two because they're two aspects of humanity.
Right. Which becomes fan fiction because you have to show that the writers of Genesis were trying to view it in your way, which you have.
What do you mean fan fiction?
What do you mean writers of Genesis?
I mean, if you take the documentary hypothesis and everything like that, or at the very least, that, I mean, writer, Moses, fine, okay? You don't got to get into that.
But what do you mean? What do you mean by fan fiction?
Like, I guess it feels like we're more in Jordan Peterson territory, but way further into Jordan Peterson territory. Like, it's as though we're taking, like, David and Goliath and talking about how David and Goliath are terms within ourselves that are constantly manifesting. But also, I'm, like, for example, like, I'll make it clear. It seems like he's trying to make Adam 1 left brain and Adam 2 right brain. I know those don't apply, but I'm saying to say, like, he is trying to gravitate terms or expressions that the writers would never have any idea about.
Okay, so
How do you know that?
Sorry, go ahead.
How do you know that?
Because I would say that that's at least what Father Stephen is positing.
Well,
he's a scholar in this area, as well as other people are saying that.
I think because we live in a modern and postmodern time, or postmodern with a lowercase p and postmodern with a capital P time, where people play fast and loose with text all the time, and they kind of just take it and they use it as, like, creative source to, like, do a thing, right? But like, that's kind of the that's the argument here. But I mean, I just don't get the sense that, like, that's so. I think that he's not speaking out of school with this. Like, this is these ideas, these concepts are not foreign to Orthodox Judaism generally. Yeah,
I'm not saying they're not. What I am saying is,
Ben's dying here.
if I asked you, Jonathan, hey,
Yeah.
We have this book. We don't understand why the writer is explaining these two things.
Right.
Would you then start by not looking at the surroundings of the book, not looking at the Hebrew and starting with that, but instead just looking only at the words on the page and then talking about like a bunch of things in our modern time? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, my point is he's reading it in a tradition, and I think that that's underappreciated. Like, that this is not sort of just out of nowhere. Like, hey, look at this text. Like, look what I can like pull out of this and turn it into this fan fiction narrative. I believe, as I understand it, he's reading it in a tradition. Ben, you wanted to say things.
I was, yeah, kind of. Well, I was going to basically agree with Trey. It is, you can call it fan fiction. I mean, he says it explicitly. I think he says, I think he says even this has no halachic consequences. This is me thinking through something. But that is exactly what he wants, what he says that we have the power to do, is to take the words that we're given and to interpret them with certain constraints in order to gain insight and live a better life. So when you say, so he's doing something, so you say like that the authors didn't know. I think that's probably, yeah, I think Elijah asking, how do you know, is probably a good question about that. But if it agrees, I'm going to plagiarize to Jacob. I think he said that in the channel. But if it agrees with Torah, then it's good. If it doesn't, then it's not good. So if he says something and it makes sense and it agrees with the scripture, and it helps you live a better life, right, according to the Torah, then it's good. If not, then we go into more problematic aspects.
Okay. I'll leave it at that. But at least we're in agreement of what he is trying to do. He's not really trying to sort of explain why there is an Adam 1 and Adam 2. He's just sort of rolling with it.
I'm explaining to you what I'm seeing. I don't know if Jacob is seeing something else, but
I would say yes and.
Yeah, could be yes and, but I see it explicitly as him trying to kind of work this thing out to help out with the modern plight as he sees it in the people around him.
And to your response, Elijah, about how do I know, is that I don't have reason to doubt. And I think that's an important point, is that, Soloveitchik, right, is not really putting any reasons against the information I already have on the book of Genesis against it, pretty much, as well as what I at least have heard from a bunch of other scholars.
What do you mean?
That at the very least, that I think a lot of the scholars agree that Genesis 1 through 11 is pretty much being mythic history. Not saying it didn't happen, but it is more for the content of the story than these events literally happened.
Yeah, I don't see him addressing.
I think the Peugeotian answer to that is that they're realer than real, and I think that's what Soloveitchik is doing. He's saying they're realer than real.
Okay, well, what a non-answer to my answer.
Oh, it's an answer of answers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, chapter 2 then.
Trey continues to drown in modernism, and we'll see if he makes it out the other side.
Great.
I think those are good questions.
Like I said, he's drowning in modernism. I never said modern questions weren't bad.
No. I think he's taking this too literally. That's what I would say. Like modern scholars would say, What do you mean there's an Adam 1 and Adam 2? No, Adam 1 is a summary. Adam 2 is a bigger description, right? Like I'm really coming at more from the mythic understanding. That's what I'm trying to argue, and at least what I understand the scholars are saying. Like you're like we're looking at this modernly and says, oh, because it gives a summary at the start, that must mean that there's an Adam 1, which is fine if that's from tradition, but I don't think I'm looking at this from a modernist perspective.
Do you like the book, Trey?
The problem with Trey is that he likes the Rabbi Sachs books and he doesn't like the Soloveitchik
No,
book.
I loved Halakha, man. I really did. But I am not jiving with this because, like, maybe it was less contentious, but like Genesis is a book that has literally like destroyed people's face depending on the interpretation. And maybe I'm too personal to this, but I feel as though him sort of rolling with this interpretation is a little frustrating, just because I've seen other people give Genesis more attention than it seems he does. Like, I'm not like meaning that going with each word, you know what I mean? Like comparing this to Jordan Peterson's Genesis series to what we have here, where he's sort of rolling with everything unquestionably, is a little frustrating, and it feels like he's being a little messy with his terms. And I think we've all agreed that like it's hard to separate Adam 1 from Adam 2 in some instances. Those are my critiques, but it could get better. I'm trying to be optimistic.
Yeah, but do you like it?
No, so far not.
Okay.
But I like talking to you, Jonathan. How about that?
So, I think I can quote Soloveitchik and solve this problem.
Ooh, I love it.
Well, not really. I can solve it for myself. But I can just explain my perspective. So, at page 7, it says, it will be worthwhile to add the following in order to place the dilemma in the proper focus. I've never been seriously troubled by the problem of the biblical doctrine of creation vis-a-vis the scientific theory of evolution, both at the cosmic and organic levels, nor have I been perturbed by the confrontation of the mechanistic interpretation of the human mind with the biblical spiritual concept of man. I've not been perplexed by the impossibility of fitting the mystery of revelation into the framework of historical empiricism. Moreover, I've not even been troubled by the theories of biblical criticism which contradict the very foundation upon which the sanctity and integrity of the scripture rest. So I think he says this, and he says at the beginning, I want to put things in proper focus. He's saying, so all those things, I don't really care about them that much. I'll still like mention them a little bit, but really what I want to show you is I want to talk through this story with you and interpret it in a way that helps us achieve, again, talk about a certain question. So I think this is his framework here. So when you're asking a question about does he believe in this, if it happened or didn't happen, I think basically his answer to you is like, that's beside the point. Like, I'm talking about something specific here.
Yes, you're completely right, man. You stumped me. I think Jonathan said that this was like an actual treatise on Genesis, and I think that got me messed up. But I think,
well, I mean, he's looking at the two accounts, so he's like starting from the text.
But as I said with that document, I think he's just saying like, this is a cool story. I'm going to make my own story out of the story.
I don't think it's that arbitrary though. It wasn't like just like, hey, check out this cool story and let me
Yeah.
use it as great source material for like this movie I'm making. Like,
it kind of feels like, I mean, I think that's the only acceptable thing. That like the other answers make me more mad. So this answer makes me less mad, I guess.
I don't know. My sense is he's kind of to Ben's point, like he says, he's ignoring the discussion around the scholarship around it, and like is it literally true, figuratively true, or like, how does science talk about creation? And it's more of a let's put that aside, suspend disbelief, and then look at the narratives from a, I don't want to call it like a Kabbalistic reading or something, but it is. I mean, Adam 1 and Adam 2 are not, kind of beginner concepts, I think.
Okay. How do you think Jordan Peterson compares to this? When he does
Hold on.
this?
I'll be back and I'll tell you about this. Well, I don't know, because I don't pay attention to Jordan Peterson's biblical lecture series, because I don't care what Jordan Peterson has to say about the Bible. But so I'm not the right person to respond.
Because I think, at the very least, Jordan Peterson did the same thing. He said, like, don't worry about the scientific stuff. Don't worry about biblical criticism and everything like that. We're just going to read the text as it is.
Yeah, but I guess it depends on what your goal is to do with the text. So
I need to grab water. I'm listening.
I should probably head out, actually.
What? Oh, yeah, it is 11.
Okay, you can continue, but I probably need to go.
Okay.
All right. Well, even though we didn't get to finish discussing, it's probably a good time to stop for everyone.
We can bang it out.
No,
It is
I
pretty
got a
late.
jet too.
Yeah, it's 11 on the East Coast at least. So, I'll try and figure out when the Adam II stuff kind of stops, or when a good point to stop, and inform you guys tomorrow what chapters to read. I don't think that we should be in conflict with any Jewish holidays either. So the next one will be on October the 4th.
October 4th.
And I know Emma wasn't able to join, so we'll see what that was about. And does everyone still need like the 30-minute delay, or can everyone join at the regular time next week?
First and third is the online estuary, so I'll try and get out of there right at 9.
I should be good on the 4th at the normal starting time, or whatever.
Alrighty. Trey, what about you? Are you good with the time?
I mean, I'll just be balling for like 30 minutes. So I'll be a little late, but I'll be there.
Okay, he'll be balling, but he'll be there.
All right, don't bump your head, Trey.
No, I won't, because I touch grass. Unlike you, clown.
Yeah, they may mistake your head for the basketball. So, all right, guys, good stream. See you on the 4th.
See ya.